Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we've got a special episode for you. That's right. One of our listeners, we do listen to you, had shared that they wanted us to do an episode surrounding trends that are happening in the NFL. Well, here you go. That is this episode. We're going to be doing a stock market auction fantasy football trends. We're going to tell you whether we're believing in the narrative or not and what that means for your auction drafts.
Hike!
All right, Joe, so we're going to be doing a rapid fire. We're going to be talking about 10 players who have received quite a bit of buzz on X. What could be good, it could be bad, but we're going to be talking about how it's impacted their auction values as we've been seeing their numbers change, just like the stock market. Let's first talk about probably the guy who's got the biggest buzz surrounding him, wide receiver Malik Nabers, the rookie from the New York Giants. We haven't heard much about him recently due to his ankle injury. It's kind of quelled since then. But before that, I feel like we were seeing updates regularly of him making acrobatic catches in training camp, having all these different highlights. Then you had the preseason game where Daniel Jones looked like hot trash. And then, people started to question, well, is Malik Nabers going to be any good? So what do you think about the narrative, Joe? Right now, we see auction values around 22. By the time when we were looking at him, I want to say he was more towards like 16 to 18. We started to see his auction price increase. So what are your thoughts there, Joe? Are you buying the increase? Are you seeing that trend? What's going on there?
Yeah, I'm not going to want to buy the increase on Malik Nabers. I know his value is sitting at $22 right now. I just think by the time you actually draft, I think the price in the auction draft is probably going to go closer to 30. And at that point, if I'm going to spend $30 on a rookie receiver, I'd much rather spend it on Marvin Harrison Jr. I know he hasn't gotten a whole lot of buzz like Nabers has. I feel like he's just been handling his business in Arizona, and I have much more confidence in Kyler Murray supporting him than I do Daniel Jones. I mean, that's really the thing. Malik Nabers, I really like his talent. This isn't a knock on him. If he had a different quarterback, was in a different situation, I just do not trust Daniel Jones to get him the ball and ultimately get the stats where he's going to need to be for the price that you're going to have to pay.
So you were spooked by that preseason game with Daniel Jones.
The preseason game kind of confirmed my already thoughts. I was already concerned and kind of waffling on whether I was going to be in on Nabers or not. And I think it's just going to have to be the right price. And if it's, going to be $30, I do not want him at that price.
Yeah, I would say, for those who are tuning in, we've been following Malik Nabers. I'd say he's been one of the players that we've had our eye on throughout this, pre-draft process to your fantasy football drafts. He's been a huge riser. And I'm with you. People might say, what? Joe, you said $30. Is that true? I think it's 100% true. We saw him in a mock draft. He went close to $27, and he went for, I think, just the right amount as Marvin Harrison Jr., like you said. So it'd be really interesting, depending on where this guy's nominated in your draft, especially if he's nominated later when kind of all those top receivers go and teams are like, I need a stud. I think you're going to see Nabers go up to that amount. So I'm definitely believing that there's a hype train surrounding him, and I would advise not getting on that train and waiting for the next train to make it to the station, because you're going to have to spend a pretty penny for this guy.
Yeah, I do think if you want Nabers and you want to, hop aboard this hype train, nominate this guy early while, the top tier receivers are still on the board. And I think you have a much better chance of maybe getting them, from this price point of $22 to maybe $25. But if you let the Tyreek Hills, the AJ Browns, and Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, those type of guys come off the board, and people are sitting there looking at who they want the wide receiver want to be, and then you nominate Nabers, I think that's where you're going to pay the premium.
So our next player is going to be wide receiver Keenan Allen of the now Chicago Bears. He has been on Hard Knocks. You've been watching him, Joe, and there's been some reports that have come out recently that Allen's at a whopping 230 pounds. So that's the narrative on the streets right now when it comes to Allen. And from what we've seen based on auction prices, we haven't talked about him that much, Joe, on this early season here. But it looks like his price is dropping. I think from what we saw, he was kind of going in those mid-teens. He's now looking at the low teens, right around $11. So what do you think, Joe? Do you think that the market is starting to drop for Keenan Allen, and what are your thoughts on it, on this narrative surrounding him?
Yeah, definitely based on what I've seen on X lately. I've not seen many positive things come about Keenan Allen, and like you mentioned, I mentioned to you just watching Hard Knocks last week, him not being able to beat Jalen Johnson. I mean, Jalen Johnson's just been all over him. Um, and Keenan Allen's known for his route running ability. Usually when he's running routes, there's not guys near him. I will say it might just be Jalen Johnson's very good because, I mean, watch the new episode tonight, and Jalen Johnson was smothering, the Bengal receivers. And then you saw Keenan Allen actually starting in the joint practice get away from some of the Bengals corners. So could just be Jalen Johnson just has his number and he's, really good at it with the tight coverage. But at the end of the day, out of these three wide receivers, I would not be choosing Keenan Allen. He's a lot older, but it just seems like Rome Odunze's Caleb Williams' favorite guy right now. And I think DJ Moore will get his. And I feel like if there's somebody left out of this offense, it's going to be Keenan Allen. So I'm not really, even though his value is at $10, I'm not really looking to take him.
If I'm not mistaken, I was talking about this with you earlier, and I sent you something. I thought I saw that the Bears are running the least amount of 11 personnel right now, is what we've seen. Is that ring a bell?
Yeah, from what you sent me, I know they were at the very bottom. The thing you sent me had like the top three teams that did it. Can't remember everyone in the top three. I know Falcons were 3, I think. But yeah, Bears were at 32 in that.
Which then tells you who's the odd man out, right? Because if they're running 11 personnel, then they're not running that, and there's 3 wide receivers on the field. So if they're running it where there's only 2 receivers on the field, then who are the 2? Is it DJ Moore and Keenan Allen? Or is it DJ Moore and Rome Odunze? That's the big question. And they've got Gerald Everett. People forget about him. He's in the tight end room with Cole Kmet. So I'm starting to think that we see a lot of connection to Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams. I'm starting to think that Keenan Allen's going to be the third man out here. He's the third wheel, going to be sitting on the sideline. Guy can't stay healthy either. So I think what we're seeing in the market trends is reality. I think the value is starting to dip for Keenan Allen. I would not buy it.
Yeah, I mean, Keenan Allen's at 10 right now. Rome Odunze is listed at $8. I mean, I'd rather for even the cheaper value, and I just believe a lot more in Odunze, and he really seems to be on the same page of Caleb, especially once Caleb starts scrambling around. He's looking and finding Rome Odunze right now.
And that's definitely went up because we've been following Odunze. He was not up at 8. So we are starting to see those market trends where you're starting to see Odunze go up and Allen go down.
Right. And I honestly, I think that's the right thing, and I would expect that to continue.
All right, so our next player, wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk. We don't know who he's going to be playing for after this year. We've been hearing multiple reports from.
We hardly know who he's going to be playing for this year.
No, we don't. We don't. And we've got NFL insiders, we got people insiders, we got everybody and their brother going out there giving predictions of where this guy's going to go. It has affected his price. He's looking at around $24. I think. Early draft season, Aiyuk was the guy on top. Debo was the guy on bottom. We've also seen George Kittle also, his value has started to increase as well. So I think people are concerned because of the mystery, surrounding Aiyuk. Where is he going to play? He's been on the sideline, hasn't been, maybe he's not in football shape. So what do you think about Aiyuk here? Is this because it's the unknown? If an extension happens tomorrow, his price shoots right up? What are your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, I honestly, I do think if he were to sign, I think we could see his market trend upwards. I know if I were to draft for now, I wouldn't really know how to face Aiyuk because honestly, if he's not on the 49ers, and right now the most interested team if he gets traded is the Steelers, heck, I do not want Aiyuk if he goes to the Steelers. I mean, I barely want a piece of that offense without Aiyuk on it. That quarterback room just is very scary. Offensive line looks shaky as well. So I do think if Aiyuk for sure is going to be on the 49ers, that his market will trend up. But I'm a little concerned about these guys that currently aren't, practicing and getting in football shape that you mentioned, to start the season. And I just think, we've seen in the past when these guys aren't doing that in football shape, we see them oftentimes get like those soft tissue injuries as well. And they kind of get off to those slow starts. So I don't know if it's absolutely like a home run for me if I'd be all in on Aiyuk just because he comes for the 49ers, just because it would concern me that, he's going to miss some games potentially.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it takes time for these players to acclimate. I mean, that's the whole reason behind training camp, to get them into that place, and he's not there. So I do think his value is dropping. I do believe that because I think people are so befuddled as to where he's going to go. But I don't know. I'm kind of, yes, you want to go for some I'd say maybe more risky plays because hey, you got to risk it to get the biscuit, right? You got to go you got to go for it if you're going to try to win. But I also, in some cases, I think it's smart to play it safe. I don't know if Aiyuk is a safe play because there's just too much mystery around him.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, even a guy like Debo is pretty risky, but at least he's been there and at practice. I know he's an often injured guy, but his ceiling is still there. So I mean, they're right around the same price. Might rather just go with Debo.
So the next player, we're going to be talking about a guy who's in the aftermath of a what would be trade at a Brandon Aiyuk going to the Cleveland Browns. That's Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper sent kind of a shot back to the organization, with an Instagram post saying something to the likes of like, well, hey, that's okay with me if I go somewhere else. Before that, we were hearing reports of him in interviews saying, hey, I'd be happy to retire at Cleveland Brown. Just recently, he was supposed to report to practice, and then he didn't. So there definitely seems to be a skirmish there between Amari Cooper and the Cleveland Browns organization. The Browns in general have been, I think, somewhat of a disappointment as far as their passing offense due to Deshaun Watson. So as far as his price goes, he's kind of a meh player. I mean, I feel like he's at $19. I feel like that's kind of been right around where he was. I feel like the value really hasn't changed much for him. Do you think if this continues, do you think this narrative could influence his price negatively?
It possibly could, but at the end of the day, like, I think all that rumor stuff is kind of gone now. Like, he's not going anywhere. I think he just got to play for the Browns and gonna have to just like it, I guess. I mean, he's not getting moved, so he's gonna be there. But even at the $19, I just don't. I think the part of the problem is nobody's really excited to draft him. I think he has been productive, but I don't know about you or how other people feel, but I don't know what to do about this Deshaun Watson situation. I mean, back-to-back years, we've seen him play 6 games with the Browns, and from what we have seen, it just hasn't been good. So I don't know how much I trust him to get Amari Cooper the ball and make him that fantasy relevant player who's currently ranked in the top 30.
Well, I definitely feel better in the fact that they have Winston as a backup, which I think Winston, has shown before that he can support receivers from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, he
But
just
I'm
chucks
with
that thing.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. But here's my thing when it comes to Cooper. He's a guy that I genuinely have targeted. Last year, I was going for him pretty hard. This year, not so much, especially at that price point. I think there's too many other players surrounding him that I think are more intriguing. And I wouldn't be surprised if his value kind of takes a dip. Even lower than that. I know his value says he's 19. Wouldn't be surprised in some of your drafts if he goes below that mark. I mean, you've got guys who are much more interesting, in my opinion, like Tank Dell, George Pickens, right? These guys are after that. Even a guy like Rashee Rice or Terry McLaurin, I think risers right now. I just don't see it. I think Cooper could take a dip.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think I could see him taking the dip, and like you mentioned, some of those guys who their price points are pretty low, I could see them going for more, and ultimately, Cooper goes for less.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. All right, so next player we're going to be talking about, running back Javonte Williams, who in the beginning, Joe, we were hearing all these reports about how Javonte was going to get cut. Whoa, wait a minute, Javonte Williams going to get cut? That was hysteria surrounding the Broncos. There's so many different running backs they had in the stable there in Denver, but it looks like that has changed. At one point, we were seeing his auction value sitting around $5. It has had a measly increase of up to $8. So the market really hasn't changed all that much. It's going in that direction, but I almost feel like it should be going more. Why is it only sticking at $8? As a Broncos fan, I'm sure you agree.
I mean, I'm not complaining, man. I'd love to draft Javonte and get him at a great value this year. But he's a name that I'm also seeing fly around more, and more people are talking about him on X. Wish they would stop, just because I feel like that's going to continue to increase his value. I feel like more and more people are hopping aboard. That was just a really bad take by an insider. That's why you got to be careful what you're reading during the training camp times. Like, he was never going to be cut, especially once he got with Sean Payton and he lost the weight. He's now currently playing at his college weight that pleases Peyton, and he looks good in preseason thus far. Second year removed from the ACL. I'm expecting him to do well, just like other people are. And I wouldn't be surprised if his, value continues to go up.
I think for people like yourself, who's a Broncos fan who has more familiarity with him, I could see you saying, I'd be willing to spend almost up to $15 for him. The average fan, though, unless the sound bites change and people start talking about him more and more, I don't know if his price will really that increase. We've seen, in a different mocks that we've done, he hasn't really increased. I agree with you. I think it's a screaming value, but I don't really see the price really changing unless something drastic happens. I think you could probably get him around that amount.
Yeah, well, I know one thing. I'd be ecstatic to have him around that amount by the time I come around to drafts. I'd really like him at that price, but I think there's a chance. But I do think, people are afraid. No, they know Sean Payton likes to use multiple running backs. A lot of people are really excited about Jaleel because he flashes more. He's the speedier guy. But from what I've seen, I'm happy to draft Javonte.
Next player we're going to be talking about, another possible cut candidate, maybe not though. Running back Kimani Vidal. He's a guy, Joe, coming out of Troy, rookie. You and I were really excited because that Chargers running back room, there's no real lock as to who's that running back one. You brought in the Ravens retreads in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. You and I both had a lot of excitement surrounding Vidal, but then people are saying he's going to get cut. And then he plays in that preseason game. He looked pretty good. I'd be pretty surprised that the Chargers cut him, but they do have Isaiah Spiller too on the roster. We don't know which one's going to get the axe. So what are your thoughts on Vidal? He's not really, right now you're looking at $1 flyer on the guy because people are so worried he could get cut. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't see that changing. I think he'll remain that dollar flyer. Whether the news that comes out or whether he's going to get cut or not, he's another guy. He's simply not going to get cut. And I just thought it was interesting, like the players he was going to cut over, like they were saying that Jarrett Patterson was going to make the team, like who couldn't even make it with the Commanders. Like, yeah, I don't know. But then you see, Vidal come out and play. He had 11 carries in that preseason game, right around 4 yards per carry. He looked pretty good as far as breaking tackles. Harbaugh drafted this guy. I can't see him not being on this team.
Yeah, it seems pretty far-fetched to me. And I do think that, for those, he's a different type of guy, right? We've been talking about some other players where their auction prices are going to go. Right. Or you could look at it even at an AP standpoint if you want. He's not that. He's basically like, is he going to go undrafted or do I get him for $1? Is it worth drafting the guy? I would say he's leaning towards, in my view, after that preseason performance, I don't know. It's kind of a draw. If you ask me, I think he's worth a bench stash, but I don't know where you stand or where others. I think most probably lean towards not. Maybe this third preseason game or the depth chart being finalized or Patterson and Spiller getting cut. That might be the thing that moves the needle to say, okay, I'm going to stash this guy.
Yeah, I think it would most likely be the depth chart, but I think he's going to be the third back once that depth chart does come out. And maybe it's just, maybe people have more faith in, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, might finally stay healthy. I don't have faith that either of these guys are going to remain healthy, which means I'm willing to stash a guy like Vidal because if one or both of those guys go down, we know Jim Harbaugh wants to run the ball. This is just like they brought Greg Roman over there. He had ties to Baltimore as well. They both love to just run the ball. So Kimani Vidal would definitely have his opportunities, if injuries happen in front of him.
If he doesn't get drafted, I think he definitely will be a guy. I would not be surprised if you and I early on, when we start talking about free agent acquisition budget and how much you spend, I think he's going to be a guy that we talk about.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I think it's worth, if you have the bench bench spots available, take the flyer on him because, if an injury does happen, people are going to be racing to the waiver wire for him. And then they're going to be like, oh, wait, he's rostered. We can't have him. So you might even be able to trade him if you want.
So next player, we're going to be talking about a guy who you were really excited about, and I think he's starting to receive some significant buzz. Wide receiver Jameson Williams of Detroit Lions. I was even recently hearing about, it almost seemed like Dan Campbell was kind of, I don't know how I would describe it, but he was kind of like, Khalif Raymond's our wide receiver 3, but, we don't really want to have him out there that much. I thought it was kind of he's very out. I mean, he'll just say it like it is. And that's the reason why you like him. But it was kind of an interesting comment. I don't know if you saw that as well. But, the Lions' options aren't really that many. I mean, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got Jahmyr Gibbs. You got Sam Laporta. But, that's really about it. His auction price really hasn't changed. We saw Jameson Williams. We talked about him as a $1 guy. They say, hey, this is a $1 guy you should take at the end of your drafts. He's now went up to $3. So price change really hasn't been that much. He's a guy I've been very interested in the past. I feel like recently I've kind of said, okay, I believed in you for a while. I'm out. I can't take it. You've kind of went the opposite direction. Now you're in on the guy. Do you think his price starts to increase some? Is it where it's at? Well, what are your thoughts there?
I think it could increase some, but I'd be surprised if it, goes past $5. I think there's a group like me who thinks, he's got a chance, now that he's kind of got the clear-cut wide receiver 2 in this offense. He's got a chance to break out potentially. But then there's also people like you who are really excited about him as a rookie, and I feel like almost has built up some scar tissue and is kind of fading him at this point. I've kind of taken the baton from you as far as the Jameson Williams love, I should say. And I'm taking and running with it. So I think that's why you kind of see his value at where it's at. But I mean, definitely you see highlights coming out now. Dan Campbell's talking about him. So there could be a chance for an increase. But like I said, I don't see it going higher than $5.
Yeah, I was running around lap 2, huffing and puffing, saying, I need some water. And you're like, hey, I'll take that baton from you, no problem.
Yeah.
I'll
get Jameson to the finish line. Don't worry, Steve.
Yeah, well, hey, I see the upside. I always have. He has looked really good. He hasn't played a full season. People forget that. Both games. Well, one was recovering from the ACL, the other one was suspension. So it'll be interesting. I see the path. I could see him going for more though. He's a late round flyer.
Yeah.
Just a question of it only takes one other person to bid you up. I'd be shocked if he goes over 10 though. I don't see him going for any more than that.
I agree. I think by the time you draft, if there's other people like myself, you mentioned it only takes one other person. I think that sweet spot is that $5 to $10 range.
All right, our next player we're going to be talking about, tight end Kyle Pitts, a guy who we just talked about recently as a possible breakout. I feel like you've been seeing highlights more and more of him on X, making these different catches in training camp. People, hyping up that now he's got a legitimate quarterback with Kirk Cousins. This is the time. Interestingly enough, though, he's been one of the weird ones, I'll say, in that we've done different mocks and his price really hasn't changed. He's at around $13. You almost see him going for less. I think a lot of people have just been burned by the guy, except for you're seeing all this hype. So people are like, I don't want to see this. This is sweet nothings to me. I don't believe this is going to happen, or it's fool's gold. I mean, are you thinking that the price is going to start to increase with this hype that we're seeing, or are people just burned?
I think it could, but I think, again, this is one of those other guys that they have just been so excited for, from his rookie season, and then he just yet to deliver another season like that. And it's interesting, man. Like, once you get burned in fantasy, sometimes you're just like, I'm absolutely out on that guy. I don't want to deal with it anymore.
You've done that for sure. I've seen you.
I feel like everyone's done that, right? But I just think, maybe just because I haven't had like the Kyle Pitts experience, I've always kind of faded him, and it's never really been anything against him. Just never really liked the offense. But now that Kirk Cousins there, I'm in on the Falcons offense. So, I'd be fine. I know early on in mock drafts, I was getting him $11 seemed to be that sweet spot value for him. And meanwhile, all these other tight ends are going for a lot more, and he still has a ton of upside. So I still think, if I can get him in that $11 to $15 range, I'd be happy.
Yeah, that's a drop in the bucket if you ask me. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a great play. So I'm surprised. I'm really surprised we have not seen his price
I
fluctuate
almost
because
wonder
people have been.
too if it's the tight end position seems a little deeper this year. I
It
don't feel
does.
like it's at one point it was like three guys. If you don't get one of those top three guys, you're fighting at a disadvantage every week because if whoever gets those top three guys is just their tight end position is just way better than yours, and you got to make up that advantage, disadvantage up somewhere else. But now there's plenty of other guys I feel you can get later, like the Jake Fergusons and Evan Ingram, guys in that range who aren't that expensive, but also have potential as well. I just think maybe the depth there is kind of causing the price to stay where it is too.
Next player, we're going to be talking about a guy who's received a ton of buzz, even from his own quarterback, wide receiver Dontayvion Wicks, a guy who maybe a lot of people don't know about, was a later round draft pick, I believe out of the University of Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. And so the question is, Joe, which is the Green Bay Packer receiver is going to emerge? I know you believe it's going to be Christian Watson, but Dontayvion Wicks has made quite a flashy amount of plays in training camp. I think people have been surprised hearing his name because, he showed something last year, but not enough to think that he's going to be the guy. He's only $1. I think he's a must-draft guy. I think people are definitely going to draft him. I'm shocked right now it's $1. I think he's going to go at least over 5 based on the hype.
I don't know. That'd be a lot. I don't expect him
Really?
to
So
go
you're
for that
not
much.
thinking you don't think there's hype on him at all?
Oh, there is hype. I just think I think people believe in other players. Like I think there's going to be the Jaden Reed truthers, and then there's like Romeo Dobbs truthers out there who think he's going to get the true amount of volume. And then there's people like myself. Maybe people are out on Christian Watson just because he gets injured all the time and don't necessarily think like me. But I think there's definitely room for Dontayvion Wicks. I just think people aren't going to be willing to pay that much for him because everyone wants to just kind of take that dollar stab at him, or maybe even $3 at that point.
Excuse me, the fact checker came in. He actually went to Virginia, not Kentucky. I thought he went to Kentucky, but I was wrong. But I'm going to disagree with you on this. I think people want a part of this offense, and I think that Wicks is the new shiny toy, and I think people are like, I think he's the guy I'm interested in. So I think Watson could go. I think Reed will probably stay around the same. I think Watson goes for more. I think Dobbs kind of goes for less. I think he gets the least amount of buzz in this bunch, and I think Wicks goes a little bit higher. If you
Well, he's
ask
just
me.
not like Dobbs. Dobbs is kind of the Deontay Johnson, if you will, of the Green Bay Packers. I feel like he's potentially going to get a decent amount of volume, just those shorter routes where these other three guys we're talking about are more of the explosive players. And that's ultimately, to me, what you're looking at for stabs at the end of the draft. And I feel like to go around along with this hype train, I mean, Wicks was the one that had that 60-yard touchdown. One of the first
Absolutely in
plays
that
with
preseason game. Yeah.
Jordan Love right in the preseason game. So I feel like that kickstarted a lot of it. And then, like you mentioned, I mean, Jordan Love talking about him, the coaching staff as well.
All right, our last guy we're going to be talking about, our 10th player, wide receiver Tee Higgins. He's a guy that you've been talking a lot about, Joe. Pound the table. He's playing on the franchise tag. Jamar Chase right now is a hold-in. He's not showing up right now. He has 2 years left on his deal, and he's won, money, which is interesting because you don't typically see it. It's usually 1 year left.
He sees all these other guys getting paid, and he's potentially going to be making $4.5 million this year. And I think he's
I
just
get
like,
it. I get it. He sees dollar signs. But as a result, though, now we've been seeing Tee Higgins getting more and more reps. He's looking stronger. But at the same time, you do have some stiff competition. You've got Andre Josephus. People are pretty excited about him. Also, Jermaine Burton, a rookie out of Alabama. So, where do you sit on Tee Higgins, Joe? I feel like the hype is rising. He's at around 18. I feel like that price hasn't really changed. I think you can get him right on the button at 18. Do you think that changes at all based on the stuff going on with Chase and this idea that Higgins may be looking to get the bag, so he's going to ball out so he can cash out?
Yeah, he's another player, Steve. I wish the talk would go down a bit. I want Jamar Chase to hurry up and get on the field so they can start throwing Jamar Chase highlights in there. People can start getting excited for Jamar Chase because I was hoping to get Tee Higgins at a value, and people being disappointed by having him last year, injury riddled season, and just didn't produce the way that they were expecting him to. because I am concerned that all this stuff adding up, and the longer Jamar Chase isn't on the field, especially, and just more and more Tee Higgins talk, it could drive up the price.
Well, I will say I've kind of rebuffed you when you've said it, and I gotta say I'm even starting to warm up on Tee Higgins.
See, this is the problem.
Yeah, I think it's heading in that direction. I think
Yeah.
I was kind of like, last year, is that more indicative of what we're going to be seeing this year? But then I don't know, man. I think things are looking a little bit different. I even think Burrow is going to be coming back with somewhat of a vengeance. So I don't know. I'm starting to warm up on Tee Higgins. I don't know if I'd spend over 20 for the guy. I don't know if he'll go for a ton, but I don't think he's going to go for a discount either.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, I was hoping to, 18, I'd be ecstatic to have him, and really hoping his value could stay there. But I'm just worried that all this buzz, and like even like yourself now, you're getting on. I know when I was talking about him earlier, you were like, but now all of a sudden you're even starting to heat up on him. So that's the problem.
Hey, you got to keep your head on a swivel. Things
Yeah.
change. We're seeing players get injured all the time. Different news that are happening around the league. So you got to keep up with the times. And Tee Higgins to me is on the rise. So I'm taking note. I'm taking note for sure. So that does it for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. For those who are requesting it, we did a stock market auction, fantasy football trends, talked about some players who are going up or down based on this buzz, and we gave you our thoughts. If you like this episode, check out our other episode where we talked about cheap versus expensive. We talked about some players who are kind of going for the cheap compared to an expensive, and is it really worth it to pay up for the premium, or can you get the discount and actually do just as good? You're going to want to check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.